Thank you for tuning in to Emerge's new weekly interview series with women elected officials. We are excited to be joined by Charleston, South Carolina Sheriff Kristin Graziano, who is also an Emerge, South Carolina alum. Sheriff Graziano is a 33-year veteran of law enforcement. She has made history in November of last year as the first woman to be elected sheriff in the whole state of South Carolina. We're all about making history here at Emerge. Thank you so much, Sheriff, for being here with us today.
Thank you so much, Eva.
Fantastic. So, Sheriff, I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to hit you with the big one first. The issue that is affecting all of us every single day for the last year. COVID-19 has had a devastating impact on every community. And local elected officials have been on the front lines of helping families through this time. How has the pandemic affected your work, and what have you been doing to support your community?
Sure. Thanks, Eva, for talking about the taboo subject. Nobody wants to talk about it, but it's very real. You're exactly right. It's here. And I began my campaign and ended my campaign first ever through COVID. So I get it. So what I've been doing personally is I'm still visiting with my patients in hospice because I'm a hospice volunteer to let them know they're still loved. But as an agency, we're doing a lot more than that. So I'll talk to you about a few things that we're doing. Right when I got elected, I met with the medical providers. We have a detention center that is capable of housing a couple thousand people. Right now we have about 800 folks in there. So I met with the medical providers and I immediately ordered testing for every resident in the facility. And I did that because we wanted to isolate those folks that were positive to prevent an outbreak from happening. So I did that prior to taking office. We identified about 22 people that we had to isolate. And from that point on, we put procedures in place so that prior to anyone coming in the facility, they have to be tested. And if they're tested, they immediately go into quarantine. And that's what we're able to control that. But in addition to that, we have clean freezer and refrigeration storage space for about 1,500 vaccines. So when DHEC approves us to receive the vaccines, because there still is a shortage, we will not only be able to store them safely on site, but also administer them in-house to our residents and our staff. That's just the detention center. Community-wise, we're continuing to partner with local community organizers and hosting grocery drives about twice a month. I try to go at every week, but twice a month we're actually partnering with these people because food security is a very real problem during this pandemic. So that's something that I'm very passionate about. I began my campaign feeding people, and I'm not going to stop feeding them until everyone's fed. And in addition to that, we've identified a real need with transportation to vaccination clinics for people that could not make it in these outlying areas. If you know anything about Charleston, it's very spread out. It's 1,100 square miles. But we have very remote areas that underserved areas that don't typically have access to internet. They don't have access to hospitals, clinics. So we bring the clinics to them. So with federal healthcare system, we'll host a off-site vaccination clinic. And we at the Charleston County Sheriff's Office provide transportation to and from those clinics for people that don't have transportation or have challenges in that, so that we make sure that we're covering all of the areas where people typically don't get service. We want to make sure that we're serving and providing that access to healthcare that they normally would not have. So this is a few things we're doing, and I'm sure that will expand. Since I've started the transportation phase, we've gotten calls from places throughout the state that are not within Charleston County. And so we've tried to redirect them to areas that we think can help. And I'm hoping some other sheriffs around the state pick up the ball and run with it and take that responsibility.
Wow, you're busy. So it's great. I think a lot of folks don't realize how much law enforcement is, really supporting a lot of the work of the elected officials into the community. So thank you for really breaking that down. And I'm excited to hear about all the new implementations you have going further as the new sheriff in town. So one of the first actions you took as sheriff was to end the Charleston County's 287G agreement with ICE. What does that mean? You want to explain to our viewers what that agreement was, and why was it your biggest priority?
Yeah, thank you. That's something that I'm extremely passionate about. So for those that don't know, the 287G is an agreement that Department of Homeland Security has with local law enforcement entities that run jails. And what it is basically they deputize local people to become a force multiplier for their agency. So we had 16 people identified in our facility that were trained to be ICE agents. So when people came in that may or may not have been documented, their job was to identify those people, and once those people posted bond or paid their dues, they would place a hold, a detainer on them, and then ICE would come in and would remove them to Georgia, and then eventually back to whatever their home country is, regardless of their whether or not they had any connection to that country or not. So ending 287G was the first step. There's more to come in efforts to rebuild the enforcement relationships on our brown communities. And when I say brown community, I'm not just talking about Latinx, Hispanic. I'm talking Muslim, Caribbean, other areas that are also that these are people that are going in our facility. What it means is we will no longer be complicit with racial profiling in our detention center, and I can't put it any simpler than that. It was a priority for me personally because I've witnessed the negative impact it's had on our community. This is my community. I'm a part of that community. They're a part of us. So it has not made our community safer. In fact, it's done quite the opposite. So as you can imagine, well, if people fear law enforcement, they don't often report crimes as being a victim because they don't trust us. So this criminal element is allowed to continue and go unreported. So, to me, it was really easy. Serving our community means serving all of the community, not just the ones that look like me or look like you, but it means all. And that's what that first step was. That was the effort in building those relationships.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think you touched on a very interesting piece of all of this, because it's not just a humane response to what's happening, but also it's about management. It's making sure that trust also helps the work that your officers and yourself are doing to protect the community. So we're all about multitasking. So as you know, criminal justice reform and racial equality is on the top of the agenda for many Emerge alums. And we actually point to positions like yours, Sheriff, as one of the ways that you could possibly make a huge difference in that area. I understand that you are focused on reforming the juvenile justice system as in your start of your term. Can you tell us more about that and your plans?
Yeah, so it's not just the juvenile justice system. I happen to be very connected to that because of I think statistics tell us the earlier we begin interventions, the better off we'll be, and it's more cost effective. But so it's not just the criminal, not just the juveniles, but it's the system as a whole. But specifically in Charleston, we are in the building phases of building a new. Used to be called a youth detention center, but it's not. It's called the Youth Development Center that we're building here in Charleston County. It's a state-of-the-art facility, and it focuses on reforming the system. I like to refer to it as modernization of the system, of the current system. So that means we construct a facility that enables you to have structured programs of support and a rehabilitative focus versus the punitive or correctional based focus, which is what has happened over the years, unfortunately. So far, the plan so far, the very first week that I was, right before I was sworn in, I asked to meet with the architects that were building the facility because I had some concerns that the facility was actually being modeled after a correctional model. And I asked for permission to come in and help redesign the space to facilitate our vision of rehabilitation. So When I talk about the space, I'm talking about the physical environment. So creating a space for the clinical, the medical, the counseling, the educational, the religious, the recreation, all the things that you would want for a child to thrive, we needed to have in-house. So they have allowed us to do that. We have changed the design. We went from 72 beds to 54 and created more space for learning environment. When I talk about a couple things, the language that we use and the way we look, if you put a child into a correctional facility that looks like a correctional facility and you dress them as if they're a criminal, generally that's what you're going to get when a child is in that environment. They're going to act like they're in a correctional facility. But if you change that environment, you change the language that you use. It's no longer a detention center, it's a youth development center. They're no longer wearing striped uniforms. They're going to be wearing khaki pants and polo shirts as if they're going to school. For sleeping, they have to change clothes. They wear these empowerment t-shirts, and staff came up with like 13 different empowerment terms: pride, commitment, dedication, that they put on those shirts, and that's what these kids have to wear to bed. And then they put them in a physical environment that is conducive for learning. And then I've hired a director of programming and education whose primary focus is to redirect behaviors of youth by creating these programs, these educational opportunities, the support that they need for youth and their families. And it's all geared towards alternatives to detention and successful, that's the key, successful reintegration as a valued member of the community. Statistics, I told you, tell us that the earlier the intervention, the higher chance we have of impacting negative behaviors. So that's what we're doing in Charleston. We have researched facilities around the country that have had great successes, and we didn't stop there. We asked them, if you could do it over, what would you do better? And they told us, and we're trying to put all that in one facility now.
Wow, that was super powerful. And I mean, I feel like there's not a lot of talk about the psychology there, not just seeing yourself in representation, but also how people treat you and the cycle that creates in your life. That's super powerful. Great.
Well, I'm going to tell you, we have our first ever chess tournament on Friday at the detention center, the current center that they're in. And I'm so excited. They invited me to come watch this chess tournament. But I've never seen that before. So
that's amazing.
I'm excited to go.
Yeah, and now that I've watched Queen's Gambit twice, I feel like that's a lot more exciting to me.
That's the name of the thank you for reminding me. That's the name of the program. I told the director that they needed to get the kids to watch.
Fantastic. That sounds amazing. You also campaigned on increasing diversity and cultural understanding in the sheriff's office. What are you doing to advance that agenda?
Oh Lord, so that's a living, breathing document, not just words, not just document, it's act. So day one, 30 minutes after I was sworn in, I swore in our first African American female chief deputy. I swore in our first African American general counsel, female. I promoted an LGBTQ woman to the command staff. I promoted an African American man who's somebody I know and love, who I've worked with for 18 years, who was long overlooked, to the command staff. And on Friday, we are promoting our first chief deputy of Middle Eastern descent. So if that is not a change, I don't know what else to do. You might have to guide me on that. So at the command level, at least, where decisions are being made, we're starting to look like the community we serve. And I don't just walk the walk or talk the talk, I walk the walk. So that was part of it. But in addition to that, we've merged our detention, we have a detention center and a law side, and we've merged the recruiting effort and created a Bureau of Community Engagement. And we've opened up a hosting we've been doing hosting application workshops in the community, meeting people where they are. Because remember, I said that so often people are not given the opportunity. Maybe it's because of transportation, maybe it's because of where they reside in the county, and there's no access to any transportation, affordable housing, things like that. So we meet them where they are. So we've casted that very targeted net in these communities and invited people to come be the change they want to see. That's part of the recruitment effort. But one of my favorite, and I think I just participated in a diversity forum at the nursing school at MUSC, and I was honored to be asked to come. But really, I was really intrigued at what they were doing. So one of my favorite initiatives has been hosting diversity forums within our agency. Our target audience has been people within our organization, in-house, that have been marginalized as a result of who they are, that have been left out, not given the opportunities. Remember, I mentioned we promoted an African-American man who's been in this agency for such a long time and a great leader and overlooked so many times. So we've been hosting these forums. My first one was for the LGBTQ community. I had about 48 people present. That's the most seats that we can have inside that to socially distance. And the second forum, they asked us to live stream it because we didn't have enough seats. So the second forum we did during Black History Month for our African American employees and their allies. And I say allies on each of these because we hope that it starts this dialogue amongst the groups. So, and then next week, Wednesday, we're doing a women's forum, and the one after that is for our Hispanic, Latinx, Asian Pacific Islanders, and other entities. So by doing this, we're creating this. The intent is to create that safe space for our employees to sit at the table with us to help problem solve, and with the sole purpose of learning how we can be better at what we do.
Right. And something that we talk here at Emerge a lot is about lifting as you climb. You being the first female sheriff in the whole state, but also making sure the people around you are coming from very diverse and different backgrounds as yourself. So that's amazing leadership. I can't let you go. This is an Emerge series. So I can't let you go without asking you about running for office. What is the most important thing about running for office that you've learned through Emerge and through your own campaign?
Wow. So Eva, I took Emerge in the middle of my campaign. I actually became a Emerge graduate right as I started my campaign. It was the first boot camp that they ran here in South Carolina, and it was through COVID, so it was virtual. So we have been so incredibly creative, I guess you could say, for that. So what I will tell you is this: the power of women in positions where decisions are being made and lives are affected. It's so important that we have a seat at the table. People today are starting to realize that we are no longer in the passenger seat. We're actually driving the change that needs to happen, and are more capable to be the ones leading that charge. But specifically Emerge, because this is what I get from Emerge: the energy that comes from other women within the organization to propel and encourage all women is just incredibly uplifting. And that's what I got from Emerge, the ability to network with these women who, I thought taught me how to be a better person. There's this, I would call it a positive peer pressure that radiates among these women. It because you see them all the time. They're not looking for power. They're really not looking for anything other than a voice, and Emerge has given us that platform. And it's just such a good aura about it, and that's why it's important for women to be a part of this.
Yeah, it's amazing what we can accomplish, and even the creative ideas you talked about with COVID come to. We've had a great series, campaigning through crisis, because things change. But also we had to learn from each other because there's no real rule book. So I totally, the network does wonders. So what advice do you have for women considering running for office?
Wow, advice. I wish I had gotten some good advice running for office, but I will just tell you this. It's not running for office. Being a part of Emerge doesn't mean you're running for office. It means you're interested in it. So there's a place. What I've learned with Emerge is there's a place for everybody, whether you want to run or not. That support is so incredibly important. But it's not for everyone. But if you consider it, I will tell you this: put yourself out there and don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Because for me, it was the imperfections about me as a candidate and as a person that really made my message resonate with the voters. But more than that, people want authenticity. They want people that are going to be authentic, and don't try to be somebody you're not. Be true to your message, and people will listen to it. As a woman who has empathy and compassion, you'll go a lot further than money and power, particularly in a polarized political climate that we're in. So be true to yourself, and don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Would probably be my advice.
Be your authentic self. Great advice. Well, thank you, Sheriff. Thank you so much for coming on here and talking about your work and your agenda as a new sheriff in town. And thank you for joining us, our viewers, for this episode of Emerge at Work. Just subscribe to our channel for updates and more great conversations with Emerge leaders from coast to coast. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.